Good afternoon. Assuming an industrial policy becomes a priority in the national agenda and our government becomes serious with its implementation, how long do you think will we experience the initial good outcomes of such policy, and what are these outcomes?
Okay, experience of South Korea and Taiwan, 25 years. Okay, they did it 1960, 1985, they're doing well. Okay, so that's why I said industrial policy only makes sense for something like 25 years. In our case, the way to do it is that I pointed that the first 10 years, we really have to build the science and engineering departments. We have to develop our capability in researchers in these areas. Why? Because it's a different game now. Okay, in the old days, up 1970s, the competition is generally factor-driven. This is according to terminology of Porter. Everything is factor-driven, depends on your natural endowments and so forth. This stage, it's no longer factor-driven. It's an innovation-driven competition. So, which means it's based on knowledge. That's why I emphasize the first 10 years while we're trying to build up the industrial policy program we're starting. Both colleges of science and engineering should be given the support. Although they're already getting it. Okay, given some more support, so that they can respond to some of the problems that we will face. They will be able to produce some of the technologies that will be needed in setting up a viable energy industry. Okay. So I expect it to be 25 years. But after the 25th year, then people will start implementing market policies also. Which South Korea did, because they want to be, by 1990, South Korea wanted to be a member of the OECD. Okay, so they had to agree to some market mechanisms. Besides, after a long time of doing industrial policy, I think it may lead to its own problems. So you have to face it. You have to know when to face it in and face it out. Okay, so for the economy to do well.
Yes, thank you, Dr. UP Tacloban is ready. Moderator, Professor Fleur-de-Lis Dacuyan. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Here is our question. Supposing the Philippines adopts a concrete industrial policy in the near future, perhaps consistent with what you have analyzed and suggested, what favorable concrete strategic frameworks you think could provide the best strategic fit in terms of effective and successful implementations, considering that our country historically is filled with many failed engagements in terms of policy implementation. That's all. Thank you.
Would you like to? All right. Okay, the question. Supposing the Philippines adopts a concrete industrial policy in the near future, perhaps consistent with what you have analyzed and suggested, what favorable concrete strategic frameworks do you think could provide the best strategic fit in terms of effective and successful implementations, considering that our country historically is filled with many failed engagements in terms of policy implementation?
Well, I think it's precisely the industrial policy I'm suggesting is specific. Okay, it's not something which is broad, where most likely you'll make a mistake. Okay, I'm aware that we made lots of mistakes. That's why I want this to be something like a learning experience. So if it's going to be a learning experience, you focus first on something which you could put a handle on. Energy is a good problem because it's an important problem in the long term, and it's something that we could put a handle on. So the fact that my recommendation is do a specific industrial policy is, I think, the strategy. Okay, so that we can learn from this, okay, and we have higher chances of success, rather than going on to have this broad industrial policy where you want to do things, everything. We have to do everything at the same time. So it's specific industrial.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. We have UP Iloilo. Please come in. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Professor Magpantay. We have a question from Sharon Rose Gallerport of the Learning Resource Center. What do you think are some of the technologies generated by UP that have contributed significantly in the improvement of certain aspects of society. Please cite one or two. At the present situation of UP, do you think we can look forward to more relevant and beneficial technologies from UP? Thank you.
Well, I'm not really sure of whatever technologies we've generated that really made a significant impact. Okay, I guess there must be some from UP Los Baños. Okay, but from UP Diliman, we're new in making advances in technology. Okay, for example, we only recently had patents. Okay, a group of Cesar Saloma and Henry Ramos were able to get patents from the U.S. and from Taiwan, respectively. Okay, it is not realistic to expect that. Okay, you say we invest now and then something like 5 years we will get something. Definitely, no, it doesn't work that way. Okay, what you do is you invest consistently, and as long as you do it consistently, you provide the support. People are motivated to work hard. It will happen. Okay, but you have to remember that countries generally become industrial powerhouses first. Okay, they're able to compete in worldwide economy before they become scientific powerhouses. Okay, look at the experience of the United States, an industrial powerhouse by 1870s. The same thing with South Korea and Taiwan. South Korea has been investing heavily on science and science technology. The way they moved up their industry is by being smart in how they linked up with the multinationals in acquiring know-how. But the know-how per se that was developed in South Korea that led to something important, it's not yet there. The most important scientific achievement of South Korea that came up is only recently the achievements by Dr. Wang in stem cell research. But that even had problems. So to expect that, okay, we're investing a lot in sciences, and then a few years there'll be important technological achievements, that's something that we cannot say. The only thing that we should do is invest heavily in these things, and even if we do not get important or really high important achievements from these areas, these institutions will be able to train high-quality scientists and engineers that can work in the private sector, which will make the economy attractive to multinationals to come in, so that we'll have industries in these high technology areas. So, yun ang lang dun eh. Wala yung guaranteed na to get this technology from the sciences and the laboratories, technological achievements. I'm sure there are some. Okay, Los Baños must have had some. Okay, I cannot think of any from UP Diliman. I asked Dr. Abis once. Okay, what do you think is the most important technology that ever come out from the College of Engineering? He couldn't name any. Okay, he could also name any for the entire country in terms of engineering. So I don't think there's any yet. But hopefully, the two patents that the NIP had one in the U.S. and one in Taiwan will be important. I have to tell you the following. Okay, in 1988, this is how important this game is. In 1988, a German and a French physicist discovered the phenomena of giant magnetoresistance. 1988. Okay, and then within 5 years, that spawned a great industry. One must have earned a lot of money because he also patented that phenomena, giant magnetoresistance. The other just got the Nobel. Okay, so two won the Nobel, but that's how important the industry is. They observed certain physical phenomena, giant magnetoresistance, and it spawned a great industry. Hopefully, if we keep on doing that in UP, supporting all these labs, okay, one day, one of these guys, one of these bright young guys, will come up with a discovery that will also lead to important technology. I hope. Okay.
Thank
Yun,
you.
marami dun, yung mga taga-physics lahat yun, mga yun.
Young men. Thank you, Doctor. UP Mindanao is ready with their question. Moderator, Professor Roberto Alabado III. Good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon from UP Mindanao. We have Ms. Marian Rica Anyora, a freshman of the BS Agribusiness Economics program.
Can this industrial policy be based on the progression of economic development and minimize globalization in the Philippines? Or will this industrial policy be based on the wants of the foreign investors?
Now we define it. Okay, we define our industrial policy. Precisely, we're going to formulate it so that we'll be able to compete globally in this environment. Okay, if you listen to the news recently, I think there was an APEC conference. Okay, and all these leaders of the world were affirming their allegiance or their support of free market. I expected that they would say that. But believe me, those guys will also be protecting their industries. Openly, they will say free market, okay, trade, okay. But when they're back in their home countries, they will be protecting their industries. And one of the ways you can protect your industry is precisely to do industrial policy. So the technique here is to do industrial policy to be protecting your industry without appearing to be doing it to the outside world. Okay, so that's the technique. I think I don't think you should openly embrace the free market. Okay, we'll lose that way. Okay, so the industrial policy is really so that we will be able to compete globally in the era of free trade. The era of free trade does not preclude having such an industrial policy. It can be done. And others have been doing it. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. UP Los Baños is now ready. We have Professors Vivian Gonzalez and Josefina Dizon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Professor Magpantay, sir. There is a question here which goes, what can be the role for a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary approach in industry policy in order to engage other disciplines in addition to those mentioned in your lecture, sir?
Well, since it's going to be a policy, okay, you need NCPAG people because they're the ones with the close link with the congressman and the senators. Okay, you need the business administration people because they're the ones with business experience. The School of Economics will play a crucial role here also. Okay. Because they're the ones with the overall perspective on this thing. Right? The College of Science and Engineering, they'll be important because they'll be providing the scientific and technological requirements of the field, okay, energy. The history, I don't think there's any need for history people, but political science will be important because they'll read the mood of the times and these politicians. Okay, they also have links. So we need this discipline, except history department.